Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about ageism in technology and software companies. Is it a thing? What are my thoughts about it? How should you handle it if you're an older individual? How should you handle it if you're a younger individual who's just worried about it and you just want to be part of a healthy environment? Those are the types of things that we're going to talk about today. Hey guys, before we get this video started, just want to do a quick shout out to myself. If you're interested in my JavaScript 360 Part 1 course, it's about 7.5 hours of content, has almost 5 stars, and I'm actually still adding to it. So if you ever see something like, hey man, I wish you went more in depth than this, or hey, I noticed that you skipped this, would you mind putting it in here? I've just added 2 new videos to it as well, giving a brief introduction more to JavaScript from a less technical standpoint and what it is. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description where you get it for real cheap. So I was doing a little bit of reading lately about ageism in tech, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with it being a rampant problem, but it is a issue in the sense that ageism, sexism, racism, it will always exist to a degree, but how much of an issue is it, right? And that's not to say that we shouldn't try and combat these things, right? We shouldn't try and make the perfect world. We're never going to have the perfect world, but we should try and make the world better every single day. And one of the things I found really interesting, I'll post the Indeed article that I read about it. And this is one of those things where you hear about ageism in tech, and I almost want to say that the tech companies have actually tackled the racism, the inclusive issue in the past with women and with minorities, and they essentially are actively going about fixing that. And there's this thing about ageism where it's almost like you don't really care. And I don't want to say that to be like dismissive, but in terms of when you compare it to those other 2 categories, it's like, yeah, just hold up, dude. Like, yeah, no one's hiring the senior developer 20 years. Yeah, right, bro. But in reality, there is a little bit of that going on where as you get older, and you want to work at one of these top companies in Silicon Valley, right? Or, maybe Seattle or something like that, you'll notice that, at just age 40, still pretty healthy dude, young guy, that you might start feeling some of this ageism. Why is that? Well, I don't know. That's the truth of the matter. I have my theories on what parts of that argument is true and what parts isn't. So let's start there. For one, I think, and it's in this article, and I think it's probably pretty true, is that when you're younger, you want to be where it's, quote unquote happening, right? The Silicon Valley, right? And that's why part of it is you're willing to change your lifestyle to say, hey, I'll go and live in this super high rent, compact city. Maybe you don't have kids yet, or you're just starting a family. It's okay. I want that because I want to be at Facebook, man. I want to be where it's going down, and I'm going to be part of all the meetups and just the environment. And your desire for environment changes, right? So statistically speaking, the baby boomers and the people are just older tech individuals. They actually, as they put it in this article, cast a wider net, meaning that they're not looking to apply to San Fran. They're looking to apply to like Salt Lake City, Utah, where you can get a nice house, beautiful weather. It's sort of, there's Adobe in the area. And I just give that as one of many examples. But the point being that there are a ton of companies that are looking for software developers. And as an older individual, you're more worried about maybe buying a house. You're more worried about raising a family, not necessarily just having a family, raising a family and settling down, right? It's going to be pretty hard even with a 6-figure senior dev salary to settle down in SF just because of the crazy home prices and everything else. So there's a little bit of that going on, as well as in today's market, especially in the web dev world, this shit's changing daily. And oftentimes when you are, and not every super senior developer or older developer is guilty of this, but oftentimes when you have 10 years of experience in JavaScript, for instance, and the various frameworks, and for all we know, the web changes tomorrow, and now everything's C# and .NET, right? Oftentimes, you have to go and learn some skills, and you might say, no. That's a fair statement. You're like, I have 10 years experience. I don't want to learn. Like if you are a front-end developer, 20 years experience, and you don't have any React experience, you may just say, look, I'll learn React on the job. I got kids, I got family, I got time to deal with this. Obviously, my 20 years experience will show that I can learn React. Not always the case. Maybe they want you to know beforehand and get up and running. And so the point I'm really sort of trying to get is that if you do have experience, you're a super senior dev, I still think it's important that you go and get those skills and, build projects and do all the same stuff that people who are maybe a little bit more hungry because they're less experienced and they haven't been beaten down quite as much. Not just kidding. But they're trying to make a name for themselves. They haven't got to that super senior dev spot yet. Are trying to have that, trying to get that spotlight, right? Trying to get that attention. So I think that might be one part of it. I also think that, and this is just my personal experience on this, is that case study of one. But from what I've seen with the 3 software companies I've worked at, is that I haven't seen personally ageism in the 3. Again, a variety of aspects, but I wonder when we're talking about ageism in tech and software, are we specifically talking about developers, or are we talking about the industry as a whole? And so this is something that I have found very interesting. To be a developer, to be a successful developer long term, is a very big time and lifestyle commitment, right? You are going to, if you really want to push yourself and you really want to be the best of the best, it takes more than a 40-hour work week. It takes 60 hours, it takes 80 hours. So you're going to meetups, you're giving speeches, you're building courses, you're writing books, you're doing presentations, you are interviewing once a year. There's a lot of stuff going on. It takes a lot, which isn't necessarily conducive to being the best family person, isn't necessarily conducive to being the best man, the best husband, but it is conducive at times to being the best developer. And so I feel like as you get older, your priorities may change and you may become less desirable because you haven't gone down that route. And what ends up happening, again, this is just a case study of one, is that most of my project managers, most of my business analysts, they're older. Most of my quality assurance, they're older, and they typically transfer out of development. Sometimes they have developer experience, so they put 3, 4, 5 years into it, realized this wasn't for them. They didn't want to maintain what it takes to maintain to be an exceptional developer. And no one just wants to be good at anything or all right. At least I don't think so. And it's very hard to be a developer long term and just be mediocre. It's not something that you're going to feel good about yourself. Imposter syndrome is going to kick in at any moment. But and you transfer over to something that's a little less time consuming. Not to disrespect business analysts or project managers. I'm sure most PMs and BAs work very hard, but it's a little bit different, right? Every PM and BA I've ever had goes home to their family. They watch Netflix, they have dinner. They don't go home and learn the latest framework, build a new PM project, build a new BA project, go to conferences. There are some that do it without a doubt, but not everybody. And I would say when you compare developers to those two, to that other side of the world, the QA, the PM, the BA, developers are probably doing it 5 times as often. And so I think perhaps some of the that's where my question comes in, is when we're talking about ageism in tech, are we talking about the entire industry? Are we talking about very specifically the developer role? I don't know. And there's also a lot of roles that older generations just aren't interested in. They give a great example here of 10 tech jobs that millennials specifically are more likely to click on Indeed. Specifically, Indeed is the world's second largest or first largest job site after LinkedIn, I believe. And so there's a lot of, and this goes back to the skills that are in demand. And I'll list it off. So a millennial is 3 times more likely to click on something for UX researcher. So what we can tell by that is that in terms of skill set, that's a relatively new thing, right? User experience is a very new category of job that, okay, is that ageism, or is it that the skill set wasn't there for, a little bit of an older generation? And you can go on here where 10 tech jobs, millennials, and these other ones are very relevant skills. So 4 times more likely, Java developer, full stack developer, Python developer, iOS developer, data scientist. Some Java developers been around for a while. Full stack developer, still same thing. Python has exploded recently. iOS developer, mobile apps are relatively in the schemes of software development. When we're talking about someone who's been in the industry for 20, 30 years, is a new item as well. And same thing with data scientists. So these are new roles where is it discrimination, or is it that these are new roles that your skill set don't align anymore with what the job market demands? Could a developer with 20 years experience in C++ go and be a Python developer? Probably. Are they going to necessarily give you that role, or are you going to continue to look for C++ roles or C roles or whatever your main, at this point you probably have 3-4 languages under your belt, I would imagine, but whatever your main language is. And then it continues on where 5 times more likely that a millennial is going into front-end development, Android development, game testing, or web development. 5 times more likely. So now we have a 3, a 4, and a 5 times as likely to apply to jobs or review the jobs that they're interested in. So it goes back to my thing is, I'm not educated enough to say that ageism doesn't exist or anything like that about the issue. I just want to raise the question as to what degree, right? So I agree that all these things exist in one form or another, right? We all have our stereotypes and our biases, and we're all human, and that transcends to the workplace, to human resources and everything. But it makes me wonder a little bit when you have jobs that have come in the last 10, 15, 20 years, and you're talking about an older generation with skills that are, experience is valuable. It really is. But if you don't have experience in the things that are relevant and you're not up to date on the technologies, how much, that experience can only go so far. So that would be my sort of thing to think about when ageism and tech. Does this exist? Absolutely. Is it as big of an issue that I think people make it out to be? In my personal experience at the 3 companies I have worked with, I have a range of ages. So I haven't personally experienced it. I do think that, it kind of depends on the skill set. I also think it depends on where you're trying to live, what you're trying to do, right? Go to Silicon Valley. If you have like 5 kids, you're going to need like $500,000 salary to live in San Francisco and, buy a house and just craziness. But if it's just you and, a recent fiance and, a little baby Dolan running around, maybe you can get a 1-bedroom apartment and just grind it out for a bit and just jump into the scene and the culture. And a lot of people are at different stages in their life. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I don't know what it is. I'll link to this article. I thought it was very enlightening. Obviously, we're not going to solve ageism by one video. I think one thing that we can kind of talk about is just have open conversations about these things. Sometimes people, when it comes to controversial subjects, want to pretend like these things don't exist. It always exists, but to what degree? And sort of just educate yourself, and if you find yourself having some sort of bias, leaning one way or another, to go that. Now, ageism outside of the U.S. may be a very real thing because one of my, I forget what country it was, but one of my subscribers told me that in their country, it is a standard put your age on your resume. Now, to me, that just sounds like bam, straight out the gate. Why am I throwing my age on my resume? It's a little scary. That seems a little strange, right? But that's the way it works there, and maybe they're a little bit more okay with that blatant ageism. And either way, right, there's plenty of ageism. We've pretty much have only talked about ageism for people who are older, but there's a lot of positive that goes about being an older individual. One, you're considered to be more mature, especially if you're new to the industry and you're a little bit older. Like, this guy wants it, right? He's been grinding. He's just getting a start. he's probably got a family and kids, so they think you're gonna, you know, they're fairly confident you're not gonna show up to work half drunk the next day, like maybe, you know, a 20-year-old or 21-year-old. And then there's a little bit of ageism on the other side of the spectrum, where you're so young. Do you have the maturity to hold the job down? Are you going to actually care about this role? Are you going to value it? Are you going to understand what it means to be part of a team when you've never been part of a team before? So it can go in either way, but typically in tech, we're always talking about ageism on the higher end of the spectrum. But that's my thoughts, guys. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share, support me on Patreon, all that good stuff. I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, baby, do you think I'm too old to be a developer?
Baby, you ain't no fried chicken. You're 30 years old.
I'm like a fine wine, baby.
Depends on who's drinking.
I get better with
Calm
age.
down.
Quick thank to our sponsor, DevicePlus.com. If you guys are interested in Arduino and the Internet of Things, such as Raspberry Pis, might I recommend checking them out at DevicePlus.com. If you click the link in the top corner, it'll take you to a really cool thing. It's an intro beginner level tutorial of how to build a tripwire using Arduino. Check it out.